Welcome to lesson 4, static site development. We'll be touching the bold-faced text with routes in Express, controllers, some views, and adding the rest of the views. So why a static site? For now, it's easier to just build, demonstrate, and refine, right? So it's fine to do some static content, meaning the data is hard coded, right? It's not dynamically rendered, right? Okay, so Express application. So revisit some of the pages that we want. We want a home page that lists all of the locations, and if we choose one location, we see the details of that location, and we can also add a review functionality, a review, right? And also we have the others, which is an about page. Okay, so we do want to map those, right? So for the collections locations, right, we have those screens, right, and the URL path, right. So the home page shows you the list of location denoted by the slash or the root, right. Location details would pertain to slash location, right. Usually you would define the specific location ID, but not for now. Location review form, we do have slash review and slash new to denote that we were adding a new review. And the about page is slash about. Okay, so your application, right, sits in the app.js file, right, and that holds the routes. I mean, that would point it to the route, right, and the routes, depending on which um, endpoint was hit, it will now redirect it to the controllers. Okay, so let's see. Requiring the controller files in the app server routes index. So that the router would know which controller to call, it does need to reference to those files, right? It does need to reference to the location.js and others.js so that we can now use the files to send it there, right? Okay, so now defining the routes and mapping them to the controller in your index.js in your route. So inside your route folder, there's an index that should be an index.js, right? So now you have required the locations and others controllers, right? We can now map it. So we'll start with the locations. We have the router.get, right? The object with the get method. The first parameter is what URL endpoint would the requester have, right? If they have this slash or nothing, right, the root, then we'll call the locations.homelist controller function, right? And so on and so forth. And so one is you require the controller files. Two is you define the location routes and maps them to the controller functions, right? And three is you define the other routes, which is similar to number two, right? So building the basic controllers, now we're done with the routes, right? We want to test the controllers and routes. Okay, in your controller files, let's first focus on the about page. The about page, you would have a callback function, all right, that you would assign to the about variable. You have the request and response, and in this case, if someone requested for the slash about, right, it goes here, and it does a render that index, right? Look for that index file, and also include this title about that object, right? And then export. Okay, so one defines a route using the same view template but changing the title to about, right? Updates the export to reflect the name change. Okay, so now let's go to the other controller, which is the locations, right? And the locations, if someone hits the home page, right, the slash or without, meaning the root, then we'll have an anonymous function, right, with request and response. Just a trivia, like most anonymous function would is usually used for callbacks, right? And then we have a response. If someone asks for the home page, we would respond with the index file, and then change the title, right, to home, right? Meaning there's a title variable there that just waits for a name, right? A value. It will be a title home. If someone requests for a location, it will say location info, right? If it goes to the add review page, it will change the title for the same index file page with add review. And then we just export the following, right? The reason we export it so that, let's say, the homeless location info and add review, we do this export so that when we head back to the route, right, we can call the controller locations dot homeless dot location info dot add review. So that's what the export helps us with. Next is we want to test the controllers and routes. So you can check this out in your browser. So hit the localhost port 3000 and then do the different slash about slash location, so on and so forth, right? And do the hops or hands-on skill. Sorry, just correction. We changed the name. Um, So we have the application file, the routes, the controllers. Now we want to have the specific views for each of the controller, right? So controller functions. So the list of location, the specific location, location info, and the add review form, and also the generic text for the others page, right? And all of these are like in the views, and the view would have this layout.pub. Okay. Okay. So creating some views, we have the public style sheet style.css. That's where it lives. The template, we are using the layout.pug, and then whenever we create a new pug file, we want to extend from the layout, so we can grab all the necessary let's say bootstrap dependencies, and also let's say navigation bar, right? Okay, so Bootstrap front end layout framework, nothing new to us now. Pug HTML engine. Be careful with spaces. Doesn't include any HTML tags. Yeah, and then we can basically use variables here. So look at Bootstrap. So you do have once you have Bootstrap, you have access to a different like classes that enables you to quickly fix or create this design. For example, you have the call dash sm dash 6. What this basically does, if you have that, it will basically um, make two columns, right? If you have both two of those, it will create two columns, right? Because in total you have 12. So it means if you take up 6 of the 12, it means you get the half of the page, right? If you don't have Bootstrap, you might wanna you may need to add more CSS writings or code there, right? Bootstrap responsive column system. So responsive means like this. If we change from desktop to phone, it should stack up, right, instead of being horizontal, right? If it's still horizontal, it's a bad user experience if they have to scroll left and right just to go to the next button, right? So basic structure of the reusable layout, we want to reuse navigation, we want to reuse footer, and we just want to change the middle part, right? View templates, layout.pug, and we have that, right? The body, navigation, the block content, footer. It means that in the block content, we'll render the content, the changeable content. Okay. Okay. So in the navigation, right, we want to use the bootstrap and pug as well with the nav bar, fixed up. You can Google this one by one to understand what's happening. It might take some time, but once you understand that one, it should be easy enough to reference. Don't worry. No one can really. I mean, not all of us can really memorize. At least you know which part you need to add to your pug. Okay, so number one, you have the Bootstrap Navigation Bar fixed to the top of the window. It says fixed top, and you have a container, right? A container just basically creates you a, let's say, a box, right? It could be bordered or borderless, right? And instead of that container, so you have some margin or padding, and you, let's say, have that link called locator, which is would link to the home page with the href, as you can see. Then the nav bar toggler button, data toggle collapse, and you have a list of nav item, right? So the data toggle collapse is allowing you to, for the navigation area to collapse to smaller screen. If we head back, this is what we meant by collapsing, right? Okay, heading back. And then we have the another link with about, okay, to the left side. And it can look at first like that if we didn't render it properly, right? Because we might have forgotten to add the container.content, right? Okay, and add the footer, still not. Then add that. You got the footer. Okay, this is the final layout, and you can just do this step by step as well if you want, like section by section, and see how it renders, right? And adding some custom styling. So you import the Google API family lobster, and you want to have the your H1 to H6 tag to have the font family lobster as well, and it's cursive, right? With the legend font family lobster. Your nav bar, you want it this color and border color to be that hex code color, right? And so on and so forth, right? So you should see some different stylings now, right? Okay, do the HOS. So location list pug inherits from layout pug and extends it, right? Pub template for homepage, location list.pug displays a list of location. This location needs to have a name, an address, a distance away from the user. Okay, readings. So now we're defining what the attributes should location object have, right? So here's another sketches for, let's say, your responsive. If you can see the slide bar text, a sidebar text went down in the phone view. Okay, setting up the view. That's why when we say a while ago response, what do we want to give as a response? We want to render this certain location dash list pug file, right? Okay, so the homeless controller function in the location.js. Okay. Okay, the page header, the main area for the list, the sidebar to consider, and so you would have the row banner that fills the entire screen, and that's why you see the call dash 12 there, so it would grab the whole screen, right? And the next would be the call 12 that call that dash md dash 8 means get 3/4 of the 12, this one, right? And the sidebar or slide bar, you have 1/4 of the page, right? So now using the plug template, right, with your a tag, right, with the href meaning a link, right, this would denote that it is calling this slash location your URI, right? And these are just creating the stars, right? Right now it's hard coded. You create 5 stars, 2 stars, 3 stars. Okay. Homepage should now look with a better design, right? So another one that inherits is the location info. Okay, plug template, add review, about page. So for the plug template for the details page, right, it would display all information about one location, right? So you now include the reviews, right, aside from others, right? So Google Map API will not be used, but you are free to use. Sorry, this course is now 628, but you are free to use it. If you can integrate, that's good. But we won't force students to use it, so it's fine if you don't have it. So it's okay if you don't have a working map. So setting up the view is the same thing. You want to catch so when the route gets the slash location, the slash location for a specific location, then it would call this certain controller, and then it will render this certain pug file. Okay, so when you now set up the controller, um, this is another summary of that one. It should look like this. And then template locations dash info, right? And something, if you notice the cards, right? These are the cards, just the translucent boxes there. Okay, so the location review pug, right? Hold a form that contains the user's name and a couple of input fields for the rating and review, right? We do the same thing. We create a pug template file for that one. We also want to create the add review page from the this one should now be in the reviews controller, right? Which is, sorry, we didn't create a reviews controller. It should be included in the locations controller. Sorry for that mistake. Right. And now this is the pug. Be careful of the white space. And because this is an input form, you have to have the form and the action that it would do and what method, right? Right now it's saying a get will form. I think later on we'll change it to post, but leave that for now. And for the form, we do want to have a button for submission. So it looks like this now. Okay, and lastly, we want the others page as a generic text. So we still want to have some headers, right? And then we want it from the called the generic text plug file, and this should be now in the others controller, right? Yes, others controller. And now you would have the buffered code to have the title and pipe operator to create lines of plain text within a p tag. Okay. Okay, and you should get the same page. This is your checkpoint. And now you have these. We go back to these diagram. And wow, that was it. So repeating those steps and creating those functions, they are very similar. So that should get you some practice. Any questions, please reach out. Thank you.